Mark left on a Thursday. Another business trip. Another hotel in another city I would never visit. He kissed my cheek at the door, distracted, already thinking about his meetings. Jake will drop by later to help with the sink, he said. It's leaking again. And then he was gone. The house felt too big, too quiet. I poured myself a glass of wine, thinking I'd have the night to myself. But then, a knock. Jake, Mark's best friend. The one who had always been around, always friendly but distant. The one I'd never thought twice about. Until that night. He stood in the doorway, toolbox in hand, a small smile on his face. He told me you needed a hero for the kitchen sink, he teased lightly. I laughed. Just to fill the silence. I didn't expect him to stay long. Just fix the leak. But he stayed. Long after the faucet stopped dripping. We had wine. We talked. About nothing important. Just the kind of conversation I hadn't had with anyone in so long. The kind that felt warm. And for the first time in a long time I felt seen. When he left that night, he lingered at the door. You shouldn't be here all alone so often, he said quietly. I wanted to tell him I wasn't alone. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down I knew the truth. I didn't expect him to come back. But the next afternoon there was another knock at the door. Jake. No toolbox this time. Just a casual smile and 2 cups of coffee in his hands. I was in the neighborhood, he said. Thought you might need some company. I hesitated for a moment, but then I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I had eaten so many dinners alone. We talked about nothing at first. The weather. The noise from the neighbors. How Mark and he had been friends since they were teenagers. But then the conversation shifted. He asked me about me. What I liked. What I missed. When the last time was that I did something just for myself. I didn't have an answer. Because I couldn't remember. There was a pause. A long one. He leaned back slightly, his eyes soft, almost sad. He doesn't see it, does he? Jake said quietly. How much you're holding in. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. Because it wasn't just a comment. It was the truth. I tried to laugh it off. To change the subject. But his hand brushed mine on the table, lightly, carefully. And for a split second I didn't pull away. He didn't push it further. He just looked at me for a long moment, then stood to leave. I'll check in on you again tomorrow, okay? And I nodded. Even though I knew I shouldn't want him to. But when I closed the door after he left, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like it was holding a secret. It became a routine. Jake stopped by every day while Mark was gone. At first it felt harmless. We'd share coffee in the afternoon. Then dinner. Then wine. And the nights started feeling shorter. We laughed more easily. Talked more deeply. I told him things I hadn't said out loud in years. About how I felt invisible lately. About how the house felt too big. About how I sometimes wondered if this was all my life would ever be. He listened. Really listened. Not like Mark, who always seemed half distracted, half somewhere else. Jake's eyes stayed on me. Focused. Present. And every time he looked at me like that, something inside me shifted. One night we sat on the couch after dinner. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. There was a silence between us. Not awkward. Just charged. He leaned slightly closer. So close that I could feel the warmth of him beside me. My breath hitched. And for a moment it felt like the world was holding its breath too. Then he spoke. You shouldn't have to feel this alone. The way he said it, it wasn't just a comment. It was a confession. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. And he didn't push. He just smiled softly. But he didn't leave right away that night. He stayed. Later than he should have. Long enough that when I finally walked him to the door, the air between us felt heavier than it had ever been. And when he left, I stood there for a long time, my hand on the doorknob, wondering if I was waiting for him to come back. It was raining that evening. The kind of soft, steady rain that makes the whole house feel quiet. Safe. Jake had come by again. We were in the living room, sitting across from each other, talking like we always did. But the conversation had changed. It wasn't small talk anymore. It was deeper. About regrets. About dreams that never happened. About how easy it was to lose yourself when you spend so long trying to keep someone else happy. I didn't realize my eyes had started to sting until a tear slipped down my cheek. I laughed it off, embarrassed. But Jake didn't. He leaned forward. So slowly, so carefully, and with the softest touch, he brushed the strand of hair that had fallen into my face. His fingers lingered just a second too long against my temple, and I didn't move. Didn't want to move. The air between us shifted. He was still looking at me, his hand hovering near my cheek like he was afraid to do more, afraid to ruin it. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly. But the way he said it wasn't just comforting, it was wanting. I felt my breath catch in my throat. My body leaned toward him before my mind even realized it. And for a second, just a second, I thought he was going to kiss me. But he didn't. He pulled his hand back, sat up straighter, cleared his throat, and we didn't speak for the rest of the night. But I couldn't stop feeling the ghost of his touch. Even hours later. It was late. Too late for him to still be there. We had finished another bottle of wine. The rain outside hadn't stopped, and the house was wrapped in that deep, heavy quiet that makes everything feel closer. We were on the couch again, talking about music this time, about how some songs feel like they're written just for you. I said something, I don't even remember what, but he looked at me, really looked, like he was memorizing my face, like he was holding something back. And then he said it. "You deserve someone who doesn't forget to look at you like this." The words landed like a weight in my chest, and before I could reply, he leaned in, slowly, carefully, like he was giving me time to stop him. But I didn't. His lips brushed mine soft at first, just a question, and I answered it when I kissed him back. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't clumsy. It was hungry, but quiet, like we were both afraid of how much we wanted it. His hand slid to the side of my face, then down to my neck, holding me like he couldn't let go. And I didn't want him to. When he finally pulled back, our breaths were uneven. Neither of us spoke. We just sat there staring at each other. And in that silence I realized there was no going back now. I wanted him. And wanting him felt more alive than anything I'd felt in years. After the kiss there was a pause. A long one. I could feel my heart in my throat, pounding so hard it hurt. Jake's eyes searched mine like he was waiting for me to push him away. But I didn't. I didn't want to. And in that silence I made the smallest, quietest promise to myself. Just once. Just once to feel this. Just once to remember what it was like to be touched like I mattered. He leaned in again, and this time I didn't hesitate. The kiss deepened. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer. I felt the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his breath, the way his touch was careful but desperate at the same time. And I let him. We moved together like it was inevitable. From the couch to the hallway to the bedroom I used to share with Mark. The one that had felt so cold for so long. And for the first time in years it didn't feel empty. He undressed me slowly like he was memorizing every inch. Like he wanted to take his time because this might be the only time. His hands were gentle but sure. His lips traced the places I'd forgotten were even there. And when it happened, when I finally let go, didn't feel wrong. Felt real. Too real. Afterward he stayed. He held me like someone who didn't want to let go. His fingers brushed my hair. He kissed the top of my head. No words. Just silence. And in that silence I knew it wasn't going to be just once. 'Cause I didn't want it to be. And neither did he. After that night nothing felt the same. Not the house. Not the quiet. Not even myself. I told myself it would stop. That it was just a moment. A slip. But it didn't. The next evening he came back.
No excuse. No toolbox.
Not even a cup of coffee in his hand. He just stood at the door and looked at me like we both already knew why he was there. And I let him in. Again. This time there was no pretense. No small talk.
No awkward hesitation.
The moment the door shut, his hands were on my face, his lips on mine. It was slower, deeper than the first time. Like he wasn't afraid anymore. Like we both knew there was no point in pretending. We didn't make it to the bedroom, the living room, the hallway. Every step felt like we were losing pieces of ourselves and finding something new at the same time. And afterward, when he lay beside me on the couch, breathing softly against my shoulder, I realized something I didn't want to admit. It wasn't just about the loneliness anymore. It wasn't just about Mark being gone. It was him. The way he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. The way he touched me like I was something precious, not an afterthought. The next day he came again. And the next. Even when he didn't have a reason. Even when Mark called from his trip, asking how everything was at home. And I said fine with a steady voice while Jake was in the other room waiting for me. And with every day that passed, I cared a little less about the lie. Because the truth felt so much more alive. It happened in the middle of the afternoon. Mark had called to say he'd be home earlier than expected. Just a day earlier. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was panic. Because Jake was already there. We were in the kitchen. Too close. His hands on my waist, his mouth trailing along my neck like he couldn't get enough of me. And for a moment I forgot everything else. Until the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the air. I froze. Jake froze. For a heartbeat we just stared at each other. Breathing hard, hearts pounding loud enough I thought Mark would hear them before he even walked in. "You have to go," I whispered. He nodded, grabbing his jacket, moving fast but silent. He slipped out the back door just as Mark opened the front. I stood there trying to calm my breath, my hair still messy, my lips still swollen from his kisses. "Hey," Mark said casually, setting down his bag. "You look flushed. Are you okay?" I forced a smile. I was just cleaning. My voice was steady but inside I was trembling. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. And that should have scared me. It should have made me stop. But it didn't. Because when I went to bed that night, lying next to Mark as he scrolled through his emails, all I could think about was Jake. His hands. His voice. The rush of knowing we'd almost been caught. And the truth I didn't want to admit, even to myself. The risk didn't make me want him less. It made me want him more. It was different that night. Jake didn't kiss me right away. He didn't touch me the way he usually did when he walked through the door. He just stood there, looking at me like he was searching for something. We sat in the living room, the silence stretching between us longer than it ever had. Finally he spoke. "I can't keep doing this," he said softly. My heart sank. "Doing what?" I asked even though I already knew. "Being your escape. Being the guy who fills the empty space while he's away. I want more than just pieces of you." I felt my chest tighten. 'Cause I wanted more too. But saying it out loud felt impossible. "You know I can't just walk away from my life," I whispered. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "Anna, this is your life. The one you're living right now. With me. Tell me this is just some game for you. Tell me it doesn't mean anything and I'll stop." But I couldn't. Because it did mean something. More than I ever wanted it to. I stayed silent. And in that silence he got his answer. He reached for my hand, holding it gently, his thumb brushing across my fingers like he was afraid it might be the last time. "I'm falling for you," he said finally. "And I don't think I can turn it off." The words hit me like a wave. Because they weren't just desire anymore. They weren't just comfort. They were love. The wrong kind. But real. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't tell him to stop. I didn't tell him it couldn't happen again. I just held his hand back. And in that quiet moment we both knew. We were too far gone. It didn't feel like an affair anymore. Not that night. Not when Jake came over after Mark returned from his trip. It should have stopped then. That was the moment to end it. To put the secret back in its box, to pretend it never happened. But it didn't. He came anyway. And I let him in anyway. Mark was upstairs on a work call. The sound of his voice floated down the stairs as Jake stood in my kitchen. We didn't speak. Not even a whisper. We just looked at each other. And then he kissed me. Right there. Quiet. Careful. But full of a need I couldn't deny anymore. I felt the weight of everything crashing over me. Mark's voice in the background. Jake's hands on my waist. My own body betraying every promise I thought I'd ever made. And yet, in that moment I wasn't thinking about right or wrong. I was thinking about how alive I felt. How seen I was. How for the first time in years someone touched me like I was wanted, not just there. When it was over, Jake stayed. He didn't rush out the door like a thief. He held me close and whispered, "I can't pretend I don't love you anymore." And I didn't stop him. I didn't tell him it was a mistake. Because the truth was, I loved him too. Not in the way I was supposed to. Not in the way the world would forgive. But in the way that felt inevitable. When he left that night, I stood at the door for a long time. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. It wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a choice. And I had already made it. There was no way back.